Redditors who have been on a reality TV show such as Hardcore Porn or Pimp My Ride or Porn Stars. How fake was it? Several years ago, my cousin went in for a tattoo at the shop from Inked, the one in Vegas. It was an off-filming day, so none of the artists from the show were in. He got his tattoo started, and they asked him to come back in a few weeks when it was healed up to schedule an appointment to finish it. When he showed up, filming for the season was finished. The shop was closed, cleaned out, and the space was for sale. That seems somewhat fraudulent. My dad sued my mom and they both ended up on Judge Joe Brown because Judge Judy said no. My dad is a scumbag. He dodged child support payments for close to 8 years and didn't contact me or my sister during that time, from when I was 5 to 13. When I was 13, he popped back up out of the blue and wanted to visit, but he lived in the Ozarks now and we live in New England. So he flies out for a couple days and we visit. Don't really hit it off, and he goes back home. A few months later we get a letter from some producers in LA saying my dad called the number for Judge Judy and filed a lawsuit against my mom, demanding she reimburse him for the money he spent to visit us. It says Judge Judy turned it down, but that they had a new show yet to air called Judge Joe Brown they wanted my parents to appear on. If she said no, there was no legal jeopardy for her. They show is for entertainment. It also said my mom could file a countersuit against my dad. So, being super P, she did. For everything from school tuition, to books, to dentist bills, to my sister's speech therapy, food, school supplies, clothes, freaking everything for 8 years. Came out to like $150,000. Now, the filming date is scheduled, and it happens to fall on my first day of high school. My mom decides that's too important a day to miss, so I'm cut from the trip. They fly out, get put up free in a nice hotel, free meals, spend a while in hair and makeup, then start filming. Within 3 minutes the judge boots my sister from the room, says that a little girl doesn't need to see her parents fight in public. Good man. The judge listens to both my dad and my mom. My dad's reason for suing was that my mom lived too far away. Judge asks who decided to move to the Ozarks. Judge calls my dad a moron. Judge listens to my mom list off all the crap my dad skated on. Judge says if he could, he'd give her every dime she asked for, but the limit is $5,000, and she's getting it all. Judge tells my dad he should be ashamed. My mom calls my dad a deadbeat on national television, crossing that off her bucket list. Both she and my sister got a bonus $300 appearance fee and cards from a bunch of people who book extras background for soap operas and stuff. Then they spent the next day at Universal Studios, the same day as the MTV Movie Awards, so they got to watch all the limos arrive and some of the red carpet for that. Then on the flight back they ran into some soap opera actors from General Hospital, which is my mom's favorite. Good trip for her. One thing I appreciate about this story is how positive you are about your mom and sister's experience. There's no I got cut from the trip and I should have been there etc. It's just this was good for my mom. Props to you, sir. I was on Jerry Springer. The episode never aired but the entire thing was fake. They even asked me to find friends to complete the storyline of a double love triangle. Coolest part of it all was when they literally asked me if I wanted a fake doctor's note or a fake death certificate made out in a fake family member's name in order to get me out of work. They literally had a guy on staff whose only job was to get people out of work so they could attend filming. I was on set for a filming Go Ghost Hunters in Buffalo. On the show, they are investigating an upper level of the Buffalo Central Terminal when they hear a disembodied voice say get out. It was the property manager on a lower level yelling at some homeless people to clear out. Everyone knew it was him, but it somehow made it in the show as an unexplained event. My favorite is the episode, no idea which of the ghost shows it was, where they hear this wheeze. Most of the show was them freaking out about them. Come to find out it's a really fat cat just chilling on a bed upstairs with a breathing problem. It was pretty funny. When my wife and I were looking to buy our home in Michigan, our agent told us we had the opportunity to be on House Hunters if we wanted to. We talked to some person from the show, and they told us the basic process. We'd buy whatever home we wanted, then they would film us there before we moved in. As though we were just looking at the place as well as looking at 2 other prospective places that they had selected. Then we'd ultimately choose the house we'd already bought and live happily ever after. We watched a few episodes, or I did. My wife already liked the show, and I convinced my wife of how stupid they would likely make us look, so we passed. From my experience watching the show and other HGTV shows, they almost always make the wife look like a whiny bee. While at a bar in NYC, someone approached my dad and his buddy asking if they wanted to be on a gourmet cooking show. Naturally, they agreed and asked if I, 14YO at the time, could join. The promoter said of course, gave them the location, and told them to tell me not to eat a big lunch as this would be a large multi-course meal at an upscale restaurant. I skipped lunch that day after a rough lunchtime soccer match, and left school early to meet my father and his friend. We arrived in a strange part of Manhattan, near the Hudson, in a rather dead part of the city. We got a call from the producer saying, "Sorry man, wrong location. We're sending a car to pick you up immediately." We hopped into a taxi and, boom, you're on Cash Cab, the bald-headed host declared as lights flashed above our heads. So, we lost, got kicked out in Chelsea, and ended up spending our own money on food and a taxi home. Very upsetting. It's a running joke amongst friends that if you see a white guy driving a yellow taxi in Manhattan, be ready for Cash Cab. I was on this morning when I was about 7 and they did a big makeover for me and my siblings. The premise they created was that we were a nightmare and my poor mum just wanted us to look smart for an upcoming christening. The main part I remember was them telling us to jump in the mud and shout no when our mum asked us to stop. Normally we wouldn't have dared, so I remember that being fun. Oh, and my sister ruined her hair 3 times before going on stage, so they made us hold her hand so she couldn't touch it. I mean, if they're making you do things that you wouldn't do normally, that's literally fiction. I have several friends that were on the first season of Moonshiners, Discovery Channel. It is totally fake. I mean, they do make moonshine, but what you see on the show is not what it's like in real life. Most of them are licensed to sell alcohol, and do sell it locally at the package stores. The others only make a little to have for themselves and a few friends, more to keep up a family tradition than anything else. But the producers had them set up stalls in the woods, and even told them what to wear to make it look more backwoods, redneck, good old boys than anybody in this area has looked in 50 years. Most of us sat there, with the guys that were being filmed, watching the episodes and laughing at all the people that probably think this stuff is real, while drinking store-bought beer. The hard stuff is only for rare occasions. It'll rot your gut if you drink it all the time. Rare occasions equals Saturday nights. I was born in Henry County, VA and lived there until I was 8, and my sister is 40 and has lived there her whole life. Shining like that actually happens, but not nearly to the scale that it was shown. My sister's ex did have a Coldwater Creek still and made illegal shine, albeit in Patrick County. Now I live in East TN, and everything here is legal. When I was in university about 7 years ago, we got an email inviting us to take part in 60 Minute Makeover UK. It's a show where a person's family calls in a team of experts to totally refurnish their house while they're away from home for the day. The audience at home are led to believe that all of the work is done within 60 minutes, and they make a point to start their countdown on camera and rush everyone in to meet their deadline. About 10 of us joined the makeover team at around 8 AM on the day and were given flat pack furniture to make outside the house before they started the makeover. The crew had a skip outside where they threw all of this poor unsuspecting guy's furniture, only to be replaced with this cheap stuff that was only available to him via sponsorship of the program. They list all of the new furniture's manufacturers in the credits at the end of the show. They also masked off all of the skirting boards and light switches ready for painting before we were let loose inside. We were let into the house as a member of the ITV crew declared the start of our 60 minutes. After 30 minutes of frantic, patchy wall painting, carrying lamps, uncomfortable seating and chipboard coffee tables into the house, we were told to vacate. We then had lunch in the street while the experts went in to clean up our mess and then did it all again for another strict 30 minutes. After we were finished and the official 60 minutes were over, there was another period of professionals tidying and filling in our shoddy decorating before we all gathered outside and waited for a man to come home from work. He would find that all of his furniture had been smashed into a skip outside his house and replaced with stuff that may look good on camera for a couple of seconds during a quick sequence, but would be very disappointing to live with. This man would be happy about his makeover and we would leave the scene as more experienced, well-rounded students with an insight into TV production. Frick me, that sounds like it sucks balls. My cousin was involved in filming for The Bachelor, not a contestant, and said they filmed many scenes in several different ways. For example, they might film them cuddling while walking and then walking while looking annoyed and so on. Not that fake, but yeah. Worked on Love It or List It. The reactions at the time of the reveal of the house were meant to be real and they actually sign a contract saying they won't go in the house before renovations are complete. 99% of the work isn't done by the people shown doing the work on TV. It's done by subcontractors. The entire staff works until 1 or 2 AM the night before filming to get the house ready. Most of the stuff they put in for design purposes was taken back after the shoot because it wasn't part of the homeowner's budget. We got blacklisted from several stores because we would buy thousands of dollars of stuff and take it back after we shot. In Holland there was a Dutch version of Pimp My Ride. A player of a football team we played against had his car pimped. The car didn't even make it home. He had to call the car repair service on his way back from the studio. My mate was on tattoo fixers. If you don't know what it is, basically they get people in with tattoos they regret and make a design they don't tell them about, tattoo it on and cover the old one up and surprise them at the end. He filmed the big surprise reveal like 5 times because he wasn't surprised enough. We already agreed what it would look like after it's done. I know, but at least act more surprised. Not me, but my best friend was on 16 and pregnant. Now I don't know if this is always the case, but none of the drama on her episode was fabricated. However, at one point, they did ask her to reenact a conversation that she had had with her mother off camera. The funny part is, they had her reenact it about a week after giving birth, so she was no longer pregnant. To hide that, she wore a big sweatshirt and held a teddy bear in front of her tummy so you couldn't tell the difference. I've been getting a lot of questions from the good people over at our team, and to be honest, I just don't feel comfortable divulging my friend's personal information in exchange for fake internet points. I've said just about as much as I'm willing to say without her permission. Maybe one day she'll do an AMA herself for you guys, but I don't feel comfortable doing it on her behalf. Out of all of them, it doesn't surprise me one bit to hear that 16 and pregnant is the only one that has enough real ridiculous drama that they don't need to fabricate things. My sister's friend's family was on House Hunter several years ago, and everything about it was staged. They had already decided on the house before the show even started filming, and other 2 options that the couple was considering were found afterwards. They filmed a bunch of fake conversations between the family members to make it seem like they were still making up their minds. The thing is, this was a Latino family, and every member struggled heavily with English. The conversation scenes were obviously forced, as these people were just stumbling their way through scripted English sentences, and it was obvious that they would have been having the conversation in Spanish if they were on their own. The issue was so bad that I'm surprised they even aired the episode. I was on an episode of Wife Swap. One of the wives was a burlesque dancer, so her new husband had to MC a variety show of which she was the headliner. I was the juggler in that act. Full disclosure, I'm pretty sure all tape with me on it is on the cutting room floor. Anyhow, pretty darn fake. The people are real, and lots of their interactions are real, but a ton of scenarios are staged. Okay, now we're going to plan the show, but make sure Wally new husband takes over. He'd never done anything showbiz before, so naturally we tried to help him. But the director kept telling us that he was in charge and he needed to be doing the planning. I caught a moment of a personal interview as well. Honest answers, but very much being steered by the camera crew and director. During the show, the crew said they needed to get sound levels, so they had people sit quietly, clap politely, clap loudly, etc. I'm fairly certain that was so they could have clips showing a range of responses. In the end, the whole show bit got about 4 seconds of time on screen. Waste of 2 days. No pay. No pay. That's ridiculous and sounds illegal. I was on a European version of Survivor where we went to an island and had to survive for 2 weeks. Whatever was seen on camera was what actually happening. The only fake thing is that we got some food to maintain a somewhat healthy diet. I was on an Australian reality called Surprise Chef. The premise of the show was that the celebrity chef would meet someone at the supermarket and then cook dinner for them. On my episode I volunteered at an aquarium. The story in this episode was the chef met my boss at the supermarket, then cooked all the aquarium volunteers a nice surprise dinner. Of course this was all pre-arranged. There was no meeting by chance. We all knew what was happening, so for the scene we all got surprised in the shark tank. We knew what was happening and did 7 takes of fake surprise. The celebrity chef cooked nothing. He went in for a few takes and an actual chef cooked all the food while the CC stood outside chain smoking. The food was average, basically local RSL quality, chicken palmy and profiteroles. I think I drew the short straw of things you get in a reality show, a crappy meal. Others get like cars or renovation makeovers. Profiteroles. That is an excellently accurate typo. My uncle was on Pawn Stars attempting to sell something. The item wasn't even his. He knew a guy who worked on the show. Everyone seems to know a guy. I actually have 3. A friend of mine was on The Bachelor. This was years ago and she ended up being one of the last 4 girls. She said they were constantly fed alcohol, were put on a strict sleep schedule where they were literally put to bed and woken up. Also, there were no clocks anywhere, so all the girls were in the constant state of alcohol-fueled disorientation. There were no chance encounters where the guy is sitting on the couch and the girl goes up to talk to him. All of that is staged. Even their conversations were a shot over and over if the reactions weren't right or their wording was off. The entire thing was completely controlled and she said no one really knew the guy because none of their interactions were real. A friend of mine's house was on House Hunters. He wasn't on the show himself, but his house was the one that was picked. And yes, it was sold and all the paperwork was signed before they filmed. He was there when they filmed all the segments but wasn't allowed to be on camera. My wife was on America's Got Talent. She was a dancer for her friend's act. She said they lived in a tent for 4 days in the parking lot. She had a very positive experience. She said she met a lot of cool people and that it didn't feel genuine for the one episode she was on. Her friend made it through that round but got eliminated the following week. My brother was on X Factor UK. There are several rounds before the televised rounds, so all those rubbish acts you see on TV have been picked by producers to go through. I've also been in the audience of The Voice and X Factor and they make you do loads of fake cheering, dancing and clapping before the show starts so they can cut it into the actual show. 90% of the cheering you see here on the televised shows have been added in post-production. I was on Stan Lee's Superhumans. Long shoot day at the high altitude chamber I worked at. They brought a guy who had climbed Mt. Everest a bunch of times without supplemental oxygen. 29,000 featuring, so we brought him to the same altitude in the chamber with some Westerners to compare against. He asked for oxygen after 15 minutes, and after 30 they asked me to pretend to pass out. Looking back at what aired, it's obvious to me I was faking. The way they edited the show. He does win the competition. Season 2. Spider-Man is the episode title. High altitude chamber sounds horrific. I was on a TV show in the UK called Bargain Hunt. I went on it for a bit of a drunken dare and never expected to get past the online application form, but after a phone interview and a bargain hunt tryout day we got on. We as in me and my workmate. I asked workmate as he was going through a crappy time. It was shot over 2 days. Day 1 we had 1 hour to choose the 3 antiques to sell and day 2 was the auction day, where we sell chosen items. The only fake bit about it was that we had an hour to choose our 3 items, but we actually spread this over 5 hours as we had to film, get sound right, get lighting right, etc. And as the TV crew are sorting out lighting and stuff, me and friend would keep on looking around the antique house for other objects to buy. I'm glad Bargain Hunt is largely real. I think I'd have lost my faith in TV altogether if something as wholesome as Bargain Hunt turned out to be all staged. I worked with this guy who was on a TV show in England. He said the show producers would tell him he would get more airtime if he was cheating on his partner instead of just being happy with his girlfriend. They just love the drama and don't care what it costs. A guy did an AMA about being on Pimp My Ride. Everything done to the car was cosmetic. I believe his car didn't run before the show and didn't run after. Basically, a polished turd. Even as a viewer, I've reacted to that. They do a lot of stuff that looks good, but they don't do anything to the bits that keeps it running and safe. I was on a reality ambulance TV show when I was an EMT. The patients were real and their medical conditions were real. Everything else about the show was fake. When we filmed it was for a bariatric ambulance TV show. In the morning when the camera crew got there they filmed us driving lights and sirens around the parking lot. Then we did personal interviews where they let us talk about moving bariatric patients and how we felt about our jobs. Then they made us say a bunch of stuff that we normally would never say, like without us these patients would die, etc. They used these clips of the stuff they made us say and spliced it into the real stuff we said. Our actual ambulance transport scene in the TV show was 100% planned and scripted. The patient wanted to go to the ER and have some decubitus ulcers looked at. However, this patient, being diabetic, had a high blood sugar of 400, having just eaten and taken insulin. We took that and were forced to treat it like a life or death situation, and then they used our earlier footage of saying things were life and death and our driving around the parking lot lights and sirens to make it seem like we were fighting for her life. In reality, in about 30 minutes her sugar was going to go back down to normal and life would be good. The whole experience actually really turned me off to reality TV and made me realize how fake everything is. If people are interested, I'm sure I can find a YouTube clip. I just have to double check and make sure I didn't sign a non-disclosure agreement. Oh god, as an EMT this made me cringe really hard. I've never seen the show, or any EMS show, but ouch. I interviewed for What Not to Wear. It started at a punk show on the West Coast. On the East Coast, you dress punk for a punk show. I just moved to the West Coast and didn't get the memo that everyone would be wearing a plaid shirt and jeans, so I was in full-on regalia. So this woman approaches me and says she likes my outfit and that she works for a fashion show that she'd like me to be on, and asks for my contact info so she can follow up afterwards. Later on I get an email from her and find out it was What Not to Wear. Obviously this made me feel like complete crap since I felt like my outfit looked pretty nice. I battled a lot internally about whether or not I should enter. They told me I would get a prize of my choosing worth $20,000 plus an entire new wardrobe of fashion designer clothing, but the trade-off is that it would be really degrading and probably ruin my self-esteem. Plus they would destroy all of my alternative clothing. They said I would have to get all of my friends and family on board so they could have interventions to tell me how bad all my clothes are. Eventually I decided money is money and went into the audition, which was in the SAG building. I also decided I was going to hide all my favorite clothes so they couldn't destroy them. A filmographer was asking me some questions when the director walked in and dragged him out of the room. She came back in a minute later and told me she thought my outfit looked great, that she had no idea how I had ended up there, but that I was welcome to recommend any other poorly dressed friends to the show. I guess in the end it was a confidence boost, but $20,000 prize would have been pretty sweet. Had a friend of a friend enter this show. The only way I found out was I was watching the show and saw her. She wore baggy camo clothes and cowboy boots like 100% of the time, no matter the occasion. They gave her new clothes and hairstyle, but about 2 weeks after the episode aired, I saw her with her camo getup shopping at Walmart. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.